An introduction by Dwight D. Eisenhower, General of the Army and 34th President of the United States.
In the Allied victory of 1945 over the entrenched might of the Axis powers, the 2nd Armored Division wrote for itself a glorious record of courage demonstrated and success achieved. From its first landing on the western coast of Africa, through its crossing of the Rhine and its thrust to the Elbe, its officers and men were in the vanguard of assault. On the beaches of 2 continents and the island of Sicily, across deserts, through mountain passes, over the fields of France and Germany. Possessed by the will to win, they were never daunted. Surmounting the manifold obstacles imposed by nature, undeterred by storm or mud or freezing cold, undismayed by the enemy and relentless in his pursuit and utter defeat, the division story is an authentic epic of endurance and heroism. Those who served within its ranks through the years of war, and their successors who in the maintenance of American security carry on its traditions, merit the salute of us all. So that those of a later day may hear at first hand the story of the division's trials and triumphs, its veterans propose to record the voices of those who led it to greatness in achievement. I am honored that I have been asked to speak an introduction to this worthy project. I do so with pride that I was privileged to enjoy personal comradeship with the officers and men of the 2nd Armored Division from their maneuvers in Louisiana and their first landing at Casablanca to their appearance as the honor guard in Berlin when the war was done. Finally, as an American, I believe that the inspiration of past greatness is a spur through generations to all Americans that they too be genuinely great in their time. The battle record of this division is such inspiration, such a spur. Truly, in what follows, Americans of this day and of generations to come will learn how men, ably led, strongly armed, and dedicated in love of country and in pride of combat comradeship, can, by their deeds, write greatness into the nation's history.
Major General Ernest N. Harmon, twice the division commander.
From Major General E. N. Harmon, former commander of the 2nd Army. Immensely pleased when I received a letter from Colonel Doran asking me to say a few words on tape for your gathering at Inglewood. I think it is a wonderful thing that the 2nd Armored Division keep up their friendships. It certainly is a great pleasure for me to feel that the men of the division would like to hear from me and would like to see me. I can't tell you how much it means to a commander to have this friendship, who realizes that he can't always please everyone, that he has to take his stand, that he has to issue orders for which some men must die in order to do the job that we are supposed to do. I do feel the friendship of the division, and I assure you that it means more to me than if I got 20 stars on my shoulders. So much has gone over the dam, as we say, since the day that I joined the division and took over the command from General Crittenberger in North Carolina early in the month of August, 1942. I always remember the day when he said that the President of the United States thought the 2nd Armored Division was a tough and great one. At that time, I was very serious because I knew that the division would have to go to battle with me, and I wondered just how much the President of the United States, or anyone for that matter, really knew how good the division was or how good I would be commanding it. I felt a great responsibility that day. Then we went to Fort Bragg, and there we had trouble with the camp sanitation, and we trained going back and forth to Newport News, loading ships, also trained by crossing little old Mott Lake in the dark, trying to get as much realism as possible for the work that I knew lay ahead. Where we were going was known only to just a few of us. I believe Colonel Rose, Lawrence Dewey, and myself were the only 3 in the division who knew about the objectives in Morocco. Then the day we sailed from Newport News, I believe it was October 23rd, 1942, with 3 selected groups, and left the great bulk of the division behind. We furnished 3 armored task forces for the expedition. One task force was to seize the airport at Salé under General Truscott. One task force was going into Port Leoti as part of the force under General Anderson, and my task force, reinforced by a regiment of infantry, was coming into Safi. Here we were to seize the port, turn our backs on the enemy, and make a 90-mile march up the coast to help General Patton capture Casablanca. Looking back on it, the fighting seemed rather tame compared to what we had to meet later on. But everything is relative in this life, and at that time, the uncertainty as to whether the French would fight or not, the strange country, the strange language, certainly gave us a great challenge and plenty to worry and think about. Then when the fighting was over, we assembled in the Cock Forest in November and waited for the arrival of the division to come over about Christmas time. And I guess you all remember the souk El Harmon, where we set up standard prices so that the Arabs wouldn't cheat us in buying chickens, eggs, and oranges. Those were the days when we didn't have USO shows to cheer us up. But they weren't necessary for the type of men we had in the 2nd Armored Division. I remember old Uncle George asked me what I was burning up 500 gallons of gasoline a week for when the vehicles weren't running. I told him blandly that we were cooking eggs, and after a certain amount of expert cursing, he admitted that it was a pretty good way to use gasoline and let it go at that. Then for a few months, I like to think that I did some good to the division in the severe battle training that we undertook in Morocco, based in the Cock Forest. You probably remember that there was a good deal of showmanship going on in the States, and orders were written for the several commanders to learn and repeat by heart to the various inspecting officers that came to visit the division. I felt that soon we would be up against the real thing, and no German was going to write us what to say when we were challenged or went into battle. The training was hard, but we needed it, and I like to look back on it and feel that it was my real contribution to the development of the 2nd Armored Division for the hard battles that it had to face in the future, in Sicily, and then from the Normandy beachhead clear through to the Elbe River. It practically broke my heart when they ordered me to join the 1st Armored Division in Tunis in April. The only bright spot for me at that time was the insistence that I had made that if we sent any 2nd Armored Division men up as replacements to the 1st Armored, they would be good men and not 8-balls. It certainly paid off to see these former good 2nd Armored Division soldiers that I knew were good to work with up there in the 1st Armored Division. After a hard period of service in Tunis, ending up with the surrender of the Germans in May, I took the 1st Armored into Italy in front of Cassino, and then in the terrible battle at Anzio beachhead. We later broke out and went into Rome, and when we got about 75 or 80 miles north of Rome, I was sent back to the United States to command an Army Corps. Just before I took over the command, I received a wire asking me if I would be willing to go into France and take over the command of the 2nd Armored Division. I was not required to do this because I had already been promoted up to the Army Corps level. It didn't take me any time at all to make my decision to go back and battle than to command some Army Corps training in the United States. I remember well the day when I relieved General Brooks up in Belgium in front of the Albert Canal. In passing through the 1st Army headquarters, I was asked if it was tank country the other side of the canal. I asked, who is over there now? They said the German tanks are. Then I replied, it is tank country. Wherever the Germans can operate tanks, we can do the same. We will cross it and drive them out. Then we crossed the Meuse River near Maastricht, Holland, and turned north, some going to Sittard and some going over on the right. And then we breached the Siegfried line opposite Ubach and crashed through the German pillboxes and forced an opening over toward Bayswater, Warwicken, Würselen, all of them member, with heavy fighting against heavy resistance. Then after a brief period, we started the final drive to the Rohr River. You all remember Puffendorf, Frialdenhoven, Baum, and Jülich. We fought against the best they had. We were the magnet which drew toward us all the German armor in that particular area at the time. We knew of the concentration of the German armor back of the Rhine River, and I felt that it would be inescapable that we would get into whatever battle that armor would fight in. You remember we finally were relieved on the line of the Rohr River, and that fateful night on the 21st of December, we received our marching orders to the Battle of the Bulge and made the most memorable march armor has ever made. starting at midnight in the freezing rain and marching 100 kilometers before dawn and only losing 17 vehicles out of the entire division, and 11 of these were reported back for duty by noon that day. This was a great exploit and showed the value of the basic training in marching and discipline of the division. It was a great tribute to the individual discipline and dedication of our non-commissioned officers and junior officers. And then took place the great battle against the German spearhead, which had gotten to within 4 miles of the Meuse River in front of Dinant and Namur. Here we fought them single-handed, the 2nd German Panzer, the 9th German Panzer, and part of the Panzer Lehr Training Division. For 5 days and 5 nights we fought them. We beat them at Signy and turned south with Combat Command A. We circled them at Sels and annihilated the 2nd Panzer Division with Combat Command B. We drove the German columns back to the Lesse River where they came from. This action will go down in history as one of the great fighting episodes of the 2nd Armored Division. I will always remember these days as ones of great confidence in the division. While everyone else was worried and running to the rear, and were talking about defeat and afraid of the German parachutists and all the various rumors that were floating about, the 2nd Armored Division came down and in a businesslike way put itself in front of the German spearhead and beat hell out of it, drove it back to where it came from. Then we were pulled off to one side, and after a couple of days refitting, started that awful campaign against the side of the salient with our objective Houffalize to join up there with Patton's army coming up from the south. Who will forget those terrible days in January when the snow was 2 feet deep, visibility 0, ceiling 0, no Cub planes could fly, everybody laid down in the snow where night overtook him. We attacked 15 consecutive days. Will you ever forget Devontree, Dauchamp, Samray, where we made night attacks and surprised the enemy through the driving snow? Those were great days of anxiety, great days of dedication, great days of effort. Finally, we met up with Patton's people at Houffalize and closed the salient. Then, for the second and last time, I was relieved from the division and made a corps commander. How I hated to leave the division. There wasn't very much to be said. I remember some boys from the 41st Infantry brought me a beer stein they had captured in Barman, which was all they could give me. Another group gave me an old Nazi flag. I still have these 2 items, which came from my fighting soldiers at the front, and which I prize so highly. I truly feel honored to have had the opportunity to command such a fine division. I felt after the war that I could take this division and, given reasonable terrain, could lick anything they had in Europe with it, and I think we could have. Much water, as I said, has gone over the dam. Now you have scattered. Now you have grown older, have families. Some of you even have grandchildren. Now I'm an old man of 68. I've been the president of Norwich University here for 12 years. How many of you would have bet that old profane Ernie could have lasted 12 years at an educational institution? To tell the truth, I marvel at it myself, but I must have got something from somewhere along the line, because I've been able to stick with it, and apparently they think I'm doing all right and want me to stay. I'm sorry I can't see all of you in person, but this is the next best thing that we could do. I'm very happy to send you this message of very best wishes for your future, and of sincere gratitude to have had the honor and privilege of commanding you in desperate situations, and of still having your respect and friendly attitude toward me. Goodbye, God bless you, and the best of luck to all of you.